Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Katherine Kelly. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what seasons our soul. And in order to do that, I have to take you back to Psych 101 when I was in my undergrad days. And the concept at the time is that everyone starts with a clean slate, and that over time we become wounded, we have traumas, we have tragedies, we have things that kind of flavor us or season us. And, really from a soul perspective, that seasoning starts prior to a given lifetime. But I want to talk about this lifetime and teach you a little bit about what it is that might need to happen in order for you to become a healthier soul, as well as what it is that seasons your soul. So, going back to that idea of the clean slate and whether or not, when we are born into a given lifetime, are we really a clean slate? Not really, but we have to think about all the elements that do season us. So we have to think about our upbringing, our parental situations, our family situations. We can think about birth order. We can think about culture. We can think about socioeconomic conditions at the time. We can think about what's going on in the political world. We can think about really weather and, oh gosh, we can think about anything, gender roles. You have to think about all of the different layers of what season you. And then you have to think about how many of those might have wounded you, how many of those situations might need some cleaning out. And so, that's what the healing aspect of psychology is about. And the soul aspect has to do with healing, but it also has to do with what I call seasoning the soul. And so, in order to lead what I call that radiant life, in order to lead a life that is full of soul health, as I describe it, we have to figure out what it is that actually feeds us at that deep level, what nourishes us, what cares for ourselves at not only a self care level, but a soul care level. And so when I talk about seasoning the soul, I really think about it in those two different ways. What do we need to do to clean out? What do we need to do to fill up? And, my Recipe for Radiance book, it was the second book that I published. And it's really about mastering the art and soul of self care. And I talk a lot about just understanding kind of what seasons us from a stress perspective. That's kind of the beginning of the book. But then the rest of the book really talks about how do you go about what I call soul care. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there is a very big difference between self care and soul care. But we have to learn that there's a different level of nourishment that we need in order to really season our soul. So some of that is just the quirky, fun, characteristic kind of characterological kinds of preferences we have. So for instance, I love the color purple. I'm going to have purple in lots of different aspects of my life. I also love trees. You already know this, that I love trees because I'm kind of obsessed with talking about trees. And every room in my house has a leaf motif or a branch motif or a trunk of a tree or a tree itself motif. Those things season my soul, and people know who I am because they know I love trees. They also know I love to travel, but I don't do typical travel. I do sacred travel. So anybody who knows that I travel knows that I'm going to go to places that are a little bit off the beaten path, that are going to be basically places that not as many people go to, because I'm going to go to those places like Easter Island, which is where I was most recently, or like Machu Picchu, because I want to season my soul in the way that includes that sacred energy, that very soulful energy. That is me. That is what my preference is. That may not be what your preference is. So for people who really get into a certain hobby or certain kind of, I don't know, an art form or um, I know a lot of people that love concerts, love rock concerts. Okay, so those kinds of things season their souls. So why is it that talking about seasoning the soul is so important? It's because we are drained by the human condition in so many ways that basically, if we don't fill up our souls enough to counterbalance the amount of drain that we experience every day, then we're going to feel pretty flat. We are not going to feel well. We are not going to have that radiant health. We are not going to experience what I call soul health. So it's super important to figure out what it is that is unique to you, that is aligning with you, that basically can fill you up in those ways. Now, I have one of my friends is an avid reader. She will read anything under the sun. She will read biographies. She'll read historical biographies. She'll read anything. And for me, that's not the kind of thing that I read. And that is totally okay. It's just that matter of that's what seasons her soul. She's gotten very much into art these days. So she's learning how to paint and draw and do all these wonderful things. And she never really did those kinds of things, but she's realizing how creativity is really seizing in her in a totally different way than it ever had. And would I choose to do the same kind of thing at the moment? No, partially because I don't have time. But that is what makes us unique. We have to realize that anything about soul health is about starting to understand ourselves in that very specific and unique way that basically we understand what we need. Now, when we go to a doctor or a coach or other kind of healthcare practitioner, a lot of times they assume what we need because it's kind of in a box form. This is what humans need. That's very true from a self-care perspective, not so much from a soul care perspective. So, what else is it that seasons your soul? So, for me, when I started getting into spirituality, it was one of those things where I would read anything about spirituality. I would read about really anything, and I mean anything. I would read about these sacred sites, and I really got into, and I still get into understanding how ancient cultures used to practice spirituality. And I'm not talking about religion, but spirituality. I also got into stones and crystals and understanding the elements and understanding how energetically each and every stone has a different frequency. And that's why they are healing in different ways, because those energetic resonances that those stones have do have a different frequency to them. And so they correspond with different forms of healing. Also I'm into aromatherapy. I really understand aromatherapy, but not so much from a perspective of what cures allergies or what can help you with things like, well, sometimes it's sleep, but really it's the sacred kinds of oils or the sacred kinds of blends that I'm very interested into. But the thing is, we have to figure out what fits for us. We have to figure out what it is that is unique to our soul that we can align with, because your neighbor next door is going to have totally different likes and dislikes. Your spouse may have totally different likes and dislikes. Your children or your parents or your even your best friends may have different likes. It is just such an important part of soul health to get to know yourself in that way. Now, when I talk about seasoning the soul, I also think about what has, quote, tainted our soul. So, soul health is also about cleaning out what has seasoned us in not such a good way. So, literally and metaphorically, if we feel like we have been burnt, emotionally, or whether it's by betrayal, by someone lying to us, by someone cheating on us, whatever it might be, that seasons us in a way that then we react in the future to other kinds of relationships. And we have to figure out how to clean that out, how to heal that, how to make sure that that is not affecting us in the future. Unfortunately, we just underwent this hurricane in our area. Literally an hour and a half to 2 hours west of us has been devastated with Hurricane Helene or Helene, and that has seasoned people's souls. Some people have really pulled together, and it's been such a beautiful thing to see. And some people have become very cynical and hurt and angry, and that is how they have dealt with this. So everything seasons our soul according to what has been seasoned with us before. So if we've been seasoned with lots of positivity, well, then we're probably going to react with a lot of positivity. If we've been seasoned with a lot of negativity, well, then the same thing's going to happen. And so when I think about these next several months and think about how to cope with a lot of the changes that are going on around the world, this is something else that I want to impress upon you and encourage you and invite you to consider is how can I season my soul now, not only to help balance out and compensate for what is being drained out of me, but how can I consciously choose to season myself in a way that is going to help us through all of these changes? Because again, I can guarantee you, if you go into it with fear, you're going to experience a lot of fear over the next several months. If you go into the next several months with curiosity and observation, then you're going to have much more of a kind of a distanced effect when you are watching what's going on. So we actually have a lot more control over how we react than we think we do, but we have to be conscious about it. We have to realize that if I season my soul with very positive things, if I season my soul with a brighter outlook, if I season my soul with curiosity rather than complete fear and complete angst, then we're going to lean into a situation and we're going to be able to evolve and grow better as a result of it. Because whenever we dig in our heels, we generally don't learn as much. Whenever we dig in our heels, resist something, we don't absorb the positivity or the things that we're supposed to have presented to us in order for us to grow and evolve. So there are so many reasons to season our soul and so many reasons to really start to enhance this idea, embrace, I should say, this idea of that we have some control over how we season ourselves. Now, I know a lot of people are who kind of have this very negative outlook on what has been happening in the politics over the last several years. And one of the first things that I tried to help them understand is the whole idea that number one, everything happens for a reason, and that basically we can learn from everything. And, decades ago, when I adopted that whole idea that, okay, difficult time, but if I can stay very present with what I'm going to learn, it can season me, it can help me understand, it can help me work through some of these situations that are very challenging to us. And so, again, it's one of those things where we have to back up. We have to decide we are going to observe rather than get absorbed. If we observe a situation, we can season ourselves. We can choose what we are seasoned with much more readily than if we react and get completely absorbed in a situation in such a way that we can't even think through what it is we're supposed to be learning about or learning from in the situation. So that's why I want to emphasize this whole idea of consciously seasoning yourself. And as part of this newsletter, I wanted to throw out this um, video to you to just kind of prompt you a little bit. Ask yourself as you go through every day, wow, how can today season me? How can I absorb something that I can learn from? How can I step back and observe a situation that could normally be very stressful, annoying, irritating, aggravating, depressing? How can I step back and look at it from a perspective of how can I glean something from it so that I can season myself in a way that will enhance my evolution? So this is all a conscious process. This is all a part of how we need to stay very aware as part of our evolution. Now, I have seen lots of energy forecasts over the last couple of weeks that have basically said we have to stay grounded, we have to stay calm. That is our job. This is what we need to do because these next several months could be very tumultuous and very discomforting as so much changes around the world. Because, as I've said before, according to many of the astrologers, which to me is one of the longest scientific approaches to life, is a lot of the astrologers are saying the planets are aligned exactly as they were during the American Revolution, which means the same way during the French Revolution and other revolutions. Basically, we have to look at this as there's going to be some rototilling going on. That's kind of my word for it, is that, there's going to be some turning over of things that aren't, that have been there for a long time that might need some change. And it's not going to be a comfortable process. But again, we don't have to take it negatively. We can season ourselves. We can consciously say we are going to move into a situation with curiosity, with I'm not going to say adventure necessarily, but with basically that openness to learn and season ourselves in a way that will take us through this in a very healthy and hearty way. So lots of metaphors I know I'm throwing out there to you, but it's this idea of how do we season ourselves? How do we consciously decide what we take in, and how do we consciously decide what we keep filtered out? It's a very important part of our conscious evolution, and it's a very important part of our coping in general. But most importantly, it is a very important part of our soul's health to be able to just consciously put some filters up when we know we need to keep some situations outside of us and observe them for our own higher good and our own higher learning. So again, how do you want to season your soul? How do you consciously want to choose what you bring in and what you bring out? Now, I'm going to throw this out there too, because it's that whole idea of junk in, junk out. If you are watching a whole lot of violent TV shows or a whole lot of scandalous TV shows, that's the energy you're putting into yourself. If, however, you are watching, I don't know, something that's much more lighthearted, something that is much more jovial, doesn't have a lot of profanity, doesn't have a lot of anger, doesn't have a lot of hostility, your energy is going to be in a totally different place. So you have to think about the junk in, junk out. What are you bringing into your system that basically is either tainting you or enhancing you? One of the things that I know about myself is I hear a lot of words during the week. I talk, obviously I'm in sessions with people very intensely. And so I hear a lot of words. And so I get seasoned with a lot of words. So basically on my off time, I make sure that I've got a lot of quiet and I get a lot of silence. And if I have music on, oftentimes it's music without words because I just need less words in my life. Now, that sounds very odd for me to say, given that I'm a writer, given that I speak, given that I talk with people all day. But at the same time, too much of something is too much of something. So I use the metaphor that sometimes when we're cooking, we can slip and put too much salt into, I don't know, a soup or a casserole or something. It's very hard to take that out. So we have to be very mindful of the fact that what we're putting into us is something that needs to be intentional. Otherwise, we're going to kind of mess up our whole system and mess up that whole quote flavor of who we are. So, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And we have to really think about, okay, moderation. We have to be very intentional about what we're bringing in. And we also have to at sometimes decide when enough is enough. And in my case, sometimes it's words that are enough. And I really literally cannot hear any more words. So I want you to play with this idea. I want you to give me some feedback, send a message, reply to this video if you'd like, or reply to the newsletter that this comes in as well, for those of you who receive my newsletter, and see what it is that can help season your soul. And also what you need to clean out. Now, I want to plug this. Now, in the near future, I'm actually going to be releasing a webinar that is based on my book, Recipe for Radiance, Mastering the Art and Soul of Self-Care. And basically, it's going to help you understand what the difference is between self-care and soul care. But it's also going to walk you through a very kind of systematic, easy, lighthearted process of figuring out what you can do to season your soul. So keep in mind that that's coming. Check back to my website. That'll be coming very soon, probably next 3 or 4 months. And I'm excited about that. I've done this webinar before, but I'm going to do it as an evergreen form so you can purchase it and watch it at any given time, refresh your memory with it. And so, you're going to have that coming, and you're going to have lots of other soul tips coming that are going to help you understand how to take care of your soul, that inner ally, that innermost part of you that needs to be attended to at all times. So, looking forward to having more interaction with you. Go take a really strong look at what's going to season your soul or what you need to clean out of your soul. And I will look forward to being in touch with you again in the very near future. Take care.